Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the eTrailer double-lipped grease seal for 3,500 pound trailers. So whether you're repacking your bearings and just need to replace that grease seal, or you are having a whole new setup where you're trying to build out your hub assembly, swapping over with the grease seal is going to be a pretty simple task. With this specific one, it's going to be a 1.719 inch inner diameter. So to get that measurement, what you do is take your caliper and you'd want to measure the journal on your spindle where this is going to ride. And then for the outer diameter, what you're going to want to do is take the caliper once again, but on this instance, we're going to be using those two smaller tines on the front here, and that's going to get us our measurement of our bore hole inside of our hub assembly, so that way we can get the outer diameter of our grease seal. Once you have those two numbers, it's pretty simple to look up what kind of grease seal is going to go with it, but if you are having some problems, you can definitely reach out to us. Any kind of identifying info that you might have on your hub is also super helpful. Typically on an idler hub, they'll put some kind of stamp on the back of it, which has a part number so that you can kind of look up what info there is on it. So usually you can find the grease seal, find the bearings for it, but if not, you can definitely just measure your spindle, your hub, or reach out to us and we can help you find the correct replacement. Now, installation of your grease seal is super simple. That being said, it is really easy to damage these. So in the install, you're gonna see me talk about using a hole saw, and I'm doing that now instead of using like a 2x4, just because sometimes that wood can be too soft and it'll press in just a bit too much, and that'll end up not having our seal sit flush with the bore hole on our hub. So it is important that you are using something that is pretty solid. So like I said, I'm gonna be using a hole saw. If you had another piece of metal that was wide enough to cover the bore hole of the hub, but not so wide that it's now sitting too far out of the hub to where the outer ring of it, if you have a drum assembly. In our case, we have just an idler hub, so it's pretty easy to hammer that in with any kind of piece of metal that's just gonna be big enough to fit over that hole. So all that being said, it is a super easy install, just making sure that you have the right tools. The only thing is when you're doing this, you're typically going to have grease all over your hands. So if you're that person that doesn't really get your hands dirty, please feel free to use our dealer locator. And you can enter in a shop to get these professionally installed on your trailer hubs, so that way your trailer is all ready to go. Now, if you are going to do this yourself, stick around and I'll walk you through the process. So to start off our install, we're going to be lifting up our trailer by the frame, so that way our suspension and our axle can hang free. I do have a jack stand under that side of the axle over there, and I'm going to do the same over on this side, but I'm going to get the tire out of the way to make it a little bit easier to get to. So starting off, let's get that wheel removed. Now to get to our grease seal, we are going to have to remove our hub assembly here, and we're going to start by popping off the dust cap and then popping out our axle nut, the axle washer, and our outer bearing. And then we can slide the whole assembly off and get to that grease seal inside of there. So I'll get ready to pop this off. To do so, just take a rubber mallet and you're going to hit this at about a 45-degree angle towards yourself. It would also kind of help to have a shop towel down too. Sometimes some of that grease is going to fall out as you pop off the dust cap, so it makes it a little bit easier of a cleanup if you have a towel down first. So yeah, I'm going to get at it with this hammer real quick and we'll get this popped off. And it's just as easy as that. After that, I like to take a pair of needle nose, and we're going to have our cotter pin here. We just want to bend that back so that it's nice and straight, and then we can pull it out through the other side. We'll set that aside. I have new ones that came with my next axle that we're going to be installing here, so I'm not going to save it. If I was just repacking the bearings, I would end up saving this, but at this point, we can kind of just toss all this and start over with some new stuff. So here's our axle nut. We're also going to have a flat washer in here for our spindle, and the outer bearing came with it. I am going to be saving this outer bearing, so I am going to have to clean this up. I'm going to spray this out real good with some brake clean and really run it through, and then we'll repack these before we go ahead and put them in the hub again on our new axle. Now we can pull our hub assembly straight off. And I'm going to wipe the spindle off just a bit. Normally I'd really clean this up, but since we're replacing the axle, I don't really need to go too crazy with it. It's just a lot cleaner to have it wiped down when you go to throw it away. All right, and then now I'm gonna focus on my hub. I'm gonna get some of this dirt scraped off of here. Try to keep it out of the inside of our hub too. All right, now to remove the grease seal, what I like to do is kind of just put my feet on the hub, take a big flathead screwdriver, and on one side of the grease seal, I'm gonna hammer in, and that typically will pop the other side out, and if it doesn't enough, what I'll do from that point is leverage up against the seal like this, and I'll hammer down on the screwdriver, and that's usually enough to just kind of pop it right out. So we're getting a little bit, but not really enough to have it pop out fully, just because this is so corroded up. So at this point, I will hammer on my screwdriver. And I try to keep my hand over it, just so that the grease splatter isn't as bad all over the place. Almost there. A little bit more. And there's our grease seal. All right, so now that we have the old grease seal out, and since I am gonna be saving this, I'm gonna have to clean this all out. You see all that dirty grease in there? You see how it's real light mixture in there? That tells me water got into the hub and it mixed with the grease, and it kind of forms that gross yellowy brown color in there. But I'm gonna wipe this out real good, get it all cleaned up, repack my bearings, and then after that, we'll get back to showing you guys how to get the grease seal installed. So I have my bearing repacked now. I'm going to grease up the edge, and I'm saying just a tiny bit. I kind of got a little bit more than I actually wanted on my finger there. So just a really fine layer of grease over the outer edge. And that's just going to help this slip in just a bit easier for us. And now we'll set that in our hub. And there's a lot of debate on what to use for actually pushing this into place. In the past, I had personally used a lot of 2x4s, and that's usually enough because it can stop you at the edge of our hub here. But at the same time, if that wood's soft enough, it could actually press in a little bit too much or press in unevenly, and then we're going to have a problem. So what I've switched over to doing is using a larger hole saw and just using that because it's metal and we're getting a nice even press on here with something that's not going to push too far and push our seal in past the lip here. So like I said, I got my hole saw, and I've got this is actually from a seal punch, but we've tore up the inside of it. So I'm still using the handle. Obviously you could throw like a chunk of wood or something else on the inside of this, anything that's going to be solid enough to help hammer it down with. And then once we have it in, we want to come back. We'll just feel around, make sure it's nice and even. And if it is, then we're all good to go. If maybe you got one side just kind of barely poking up a little bit more, maybe hit it a couple more times, see if that fully seats in. All right, before we slot our hub assembly back on, we want to make sure that we kind of grease this up a bit. Make sure it's nice and smooth transition for it. And honestly, I could put a little bit more than what I've got on there because we're eventually going to kind of fill in this whole cavity using our grease zerk fitting here. And all we got to do is just slot this straight on. There we go. Now we can put in our outer bearing. Now I'm putting on that axle, or spindle washer, I should say. After the spindle washer, we're going to throw on our castle nut. Not threading on right. And then I have a 1.5-inch socket here, and we're gonna torque this to the manufacturer's specifications, and then we'll back it off. So the whole point of the torquing process here is so it fully seats the bearings, and once we do, we shouldn't have any wobbly play with our hub. All right, so we got it there, and I'm gonna back it off. And then from there, we're only gonna put it hand tight. Let's see if we can get our cotter pin in. We may have to move it just a bit if their cotter pin holes don't line up, because I got them at the top here, so I am gonna have to back off just a bit. There we go, and the cotter pin is what's gonna seal up this so that that can't wobble off with road vibration. It's fighting me a bit, so let's grab our pliers. There we go. What we're looking for here, I shouldn't be able to get any wobble out of this. Spin that a few times, yeah. So there's no play in it, so we know we're good. If we did have play, we would want to then re-torque it one more time, make sure that it fully seats those bearings and that we're good before we move forward. But since that's fine, I'm gonna bend down one side, and on the other side, I'm gonna bend up. That way we can get our grease cap back on. With that back in place, our hub is ready to go. The only thing we need to do is pop on a grease gun, get a little bit of grease put in there. We don't want to go crazy with it though. A lot of people think that you need to just sit here and dump a whole tube of grease in through a grease zerk fitting, and realistically, you're only wanting to put a few squirts in there, spin it, put a few more squirts in there, spin it, and then at that point you kind of want to stop. You don't want to go too much. If you fill this whole cavity up and you pressurize it with that grease, you could end up blowing out the grease seal in the back, and that's going to end up just throwing grease everywhere. Then your bearings are going to overheat. So it's not something that we want, especially if you have brake assemblies, because then you're going to get grease all over the brake assemblies, and then you're replacing those as well. Last thing to do is just pop on our dust cap. I have a little punch that's designed specifically for that. Makes it a little bit easier to get a nice even pressure, but honestly, you could just tap it with your hammer and just spin the hub while you're doing it to make sure that you're getting it in nice and even. A little bit more. Well, that's going to do it for our look at and installation of the etrailer double lip grease seal for 3,500 pound axles. My name's Kevin, and if you still have some questions about what's going to be the right grease seal replacement for your trailer, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, a comment on this video, or a phone call to our customer service department. We'd be happy to help you out in your journey.